I was just thinking that humans generally like things that are new but not that new, and that
Yeah.
probably having the familiar tune, and then if you hear something clever, I think the biggest danger is cheesiness. But but if you have something clever, and as Adam says, anchored in the brand, if it's a tongue-in-cheek brand, then it's a tongue-in-cheek lyric, that'll work. Um, and maybe it adds freshness rather than clutter.
Welcome to Audio Branding, the hidden gem of marketing. Sound plays a more important role in human behavior and our decision making than you may realize. In this podcast, I'll help you understand the art and science of sound so you can better influence others in business and your life. I'm your host, Jodi Krangle. Let's delve a little deeper. Here's the first part of my conversation with Jeanna, Adam Plyman, Colleen Fahey, and John Sanfilippo about audio branding for the holidays. This next two-part episode is a real treat. Recently, I had a conversation in a LinkedIn audio event with four very knowledgeable and talented audio branding experts about what companies can do to make the most of their audio brand over the holidays. My panelists were Jeanna, a sonic strategist, author, and audio branding thought leader with Dreamer Productions; Adam Plyman, music and audio creative director and Grammy-nominated engineer with Play Audio Agency; Colleen Fahey, author and U.S. managing director of Cesium Sound; and John Sanfilippo, a sound strategist with his company Soundwise. All four had a lot to say about this subject, and we discussed what companies should have done prior to the holidays, what trends they were seeing in the area of audio branding, and what they thought companies could do with their audio branding to prepare for the new year. It was a fascinating discussion, and I think you'll get a lot from listening. As always, if you have questions for my guests, you're welcome to reach out through the links in the show notes. If you have questions for me, visit audiobrandingpodcast.com, where you'll find a lot of ways to get in touch. Plus, subscribing to the newsletter will let you know when the new podcasts are available. And if you're getting some value from listening, the best ways to show your support are to share this podcast with a friend and leave an honest review. Both those things really help, and I'd love to feature your review on future podcasts. You can leave one either in written or in voice format from the podcast's main page. I would so appreciate that. And now, here's my conversation with Jeanna, Adam Plyman, Colleen Fahey, and John Sanfilippo about audio branding for the holidays. Well, thank you everyone for being here, especially to my esteemed panelists here, which they have very graciously donated their time to join us and talk about this particular topic, which I think is very apropos considering the time of year. Although it was pointed out to me that I think it's a little late for people to start working on their audio branding for the holidays, for these holidays. So really what we're discussing here today is where you could go with holidays in the future and what you might want to consider when you're thinking about audio branding for the holidays. So I just want to get us started with a bit of a question here. And John, I'm going to start with you. If you could just introduce yourself a little bit and then tell us what you think companies should have done before the holidays to get the most out of their audio brand, if anything.
Yes. No, thanks, Jodi. My name is John Sanfilippo. I run a sonic branding agency not too far from Jodi. Jodi's in the Toronto area. I am about 2 hours east of her in Kingston, Ontario. In terms of sonic branding, I think you sort of alluded to it a moment ago. Obviously, we're a little too late maybe in the game if you're thinking about this season for sonic branding and holidays and that sort of thing. But yeah, it really, to me, it starts with having a really solid sonic identity to start with and allowing that to grow and then adapting it to different seasons, like the holiday season with the holiday imagery, I suppose you could call it. Obviously, sound is not visual, but sound is very evocative. And depending on how you use those sounds, they can create various images, such as holiday sounds.
Yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So Adam, how about you? Where would you go with that? And if you could also introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm the creative director here at Play Audio Agency. I am just south of y'all, in Cincinnati, Ohio. We have offices here as well as Austin, Texas. And yeah, so it's to your point, John. The audio brand has to be there first, right? The identity has to be there first. If it's nice and flexible, it's going to be able to flex to the season. I look down at kind of what we've seen our clients do over the holidays, and I think it's all about preparation for flexibility. Understanding emotionally what spaces you're able to live in as a brand really empowers you to be able to know what sort of level of sentimentality or excitement, or just general happiness you holistically feels authentic to you as a brand, in these sort of seasons. And I think it's, the holiday season for sure. Um, this is definitely a priority this time of year, but it also goes through summertime and it goes through all the different characters and attributes of your brand. So this is just one extension of it. I liken back to our days of working years ago in jingles, and just listening to the brands add sleigh bells to their jingle, and suddenly that works as a holiday jingle.
Yeah.
Is we've come a long way in the understanding of how people expect to hear from us as brands. So yeah, for me, it's all about preparation, understanding flexibility early on. Seeing
Okay.
some good examples of it this year too.
Oh, great. I'll ask you about those examples later. Definitely. I do want to hear about examples that you're particularly impressed with. But yeah, sleigh bells don't answer all problems. So, yeah. Colleen, love to have your perspective on this as well. And if you could just briefly introduce yourself as well, that would be great.
Okay. My name's Colleen Fahey, and I'm in Chicago. I'm the U.S. Managing Director of CZM Son, which is a sonic branding agency that's global, and I've brought it to the United States and Canada. And I think one of the things that you have to be aware of as a brand is how small the repertory of standards are in songs around the holidays and how overused they can get. So be they in your television advertising or in your store, people are hearing the same tunes over and over. And I think that's a problem for brand differentiation. So as John and Adam have said, if you have your own sound, then you can adapt your sound to a holiday sound without even using sleigh bells. You might use a choral way of singing it or something like that, maybe not even singing. But you can make your brand actually a relief to the poor people who are listening to the same songs over and over. And the people that I worry the most about are the employees of retailers of every kind,
Oh,
banks, stores where people are Christmas shopping, because instead of having as many songs as they usually get to choose from in the air around them, they have to listen to these jingling songs over and over. And it adds to the stress of the holiday season. So there are many ways to deal with that. And one is to not play whole songs, but to play little winks of songs to acknowledge the holiday. But 7 seconds is enough. And then go back to your playlist. 7 seconds that is your branded sound is even better, because then people will remember your brand and associate it with the holidays. I want to tell you one thing that people forget: e-cards. A lot of brands are sending out e-cards to thank customers. And you can take your brand sound and make it a holiday sound of it. And you'll have a lovely, charming way to express yourself in a branded way without being overwhelming.
I love that. What a great idea, Colleen. And yeah, I totally feel for all of the people working in shops right now, because the nonstop Christmas music is just probably driving them batty. And it starts a month beforehand. Yeah, pretty crazy. Yeah, Jeanna, how about you? You want to introduce yourself briefly and then also weigh in on this topic?
Sure. I just wanted to say, yes, that is true. I have done customer service for many years in my life, and it is a slow, painful way of torture to have to listen to these same 5 or 6 songs playing over and over again. I used to work in Meyer and Frank, which was a subsidiary of Macy's, and oh my goodness, it was intense. And that was not even. I think I gave up around Thanksgiving time, but it was bad enough. So hi, yes, my name is Jeanna Isham. And I have a company called Dreamer Productions where I consult and strategize about sound and sound strategy. I also have my sister site, Sound and Marketing Learning, where I educate. And so I have a podcast called Sound and Marketing. And I also have ebooks and courses and lots of free resources on the soundandmarketing.com site. So, yeah, my way in on this. I think I'm going to like really mirror what Colleen said, because for one, it is too late to start for this holiday season, obviously. But I think that it's more clever and more creative when you come up with sounds for holidays that are branded, but don't necessarily have jingle bells, right? So like there's other words that you can personify with the holidays, like family, warm, nurturing, memories, those sorts of things. And I think that if you can find the heart of your actual brand persona and personify that into the holidays without going the cookie cutter generic way, you will stand out and you will be a relief from what other people are listening to constantly. I mean, the music starts in our house right after Thanksgiving dinner, and it doesn't end until, pretty much December 31st.
Yeah.
So it is nice to have more creative ways for people to acknowledge the holidays, because we're going to acknowledge it, but not just oversaturate the market.
And, I have to say that as a Canadian, our Thanksgiving is a month before yours. So imagine how long we've been listening.
Well, that's
Yes.
like in America when people start it right after Halloween then. Like that's
Yep.
insatiable. I can't stand that. That's too early.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And it gets worse and worse every year. Yeah,
It
because
does.
you're right. We hear the same songs over and over and over again. I'm with Colleen. 7 seconds of each is enough for me.
Absolutely. Like, because I mean, it's just the reminder. That's all that we're trying to do, right? It's the reminder. We're not trying to drill anything into anyone. We're not trying to convince people that it's the holiday season. We already
They
know
know.
that.
Yeah, I think they're aware. Yeah. Thanks for taking the time to listen. Quick question. Do you know anyone else who could benefit from hearing more about how powerful sound can be? If so, would you mind sharing this podcast with them? It would mean so much to me. Now, I'll stop interrupting and let you get back to the show. There's a lot, I guess, that can come up in this season, audio branding wise. Specifically, I'm wondering what trends all of you are seeing. And John, is there a particular trend that you're seeing this year that, I don't know, maybe has been different from other years?
Oh, geez. I was hoping you wouldn't direct that to me. I can't think of any specific trends right off the bat. I would defer to anyone else if they have. So I'm sure I'll think of something later. But
Sure.
yeah.
Adam, what do
Right.
you think?
Well, one of the things
Oh, okay.
that
Yeah, go ahead, Colleen.
I'm
Yeah.
seeing, one of the things that I'm seeing is a lot of this research that's coming out of System One, this company that used to be called Brain Juicer,
Mhm.
that tests for whether it's hitting people emotionally, and there, especially in the UK where they do most of their tests, there are so many story-based advertisements that use all kinds of wonderful heart-tugging narratives and cute pets and animated characters, and usually a song that that's also very emotional. And they are saying that the more emotional response you get, the higher your sales will be, either short-term or long-term, depending on what emotions you evoke. So this story-based advertising, they say that all the best ads happen at Christmas time, but they run for the shortest amount of time because then they get cut down when Christmas is over. So that seems to be a trend that's going on, at least in Europe, and it usually comes with songs you already know, but aren't necessarily Christmas songs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Colleen, I'm seeing that often too, and I gotta say I look forward to it. Although what I don't look forward to is them actually getting me, like when I'm getting ready in the morning, and like
Making you cry.
and yeah, giving me pause exactly.
Oh my goodness.
You
They do
know,
that to me all the
seeing
time.
kids move up and move out, and then come back home for the holidays, and man, you'll get me every time. But yeah, I mean that plays into the emotionally connected consumers. You know, 2 times likely to you're going to be, it's 2 times more worth to your brand. So, why not? Why can't we take these stories, and a lot of great brands do that, tell great stories. I think it would be nice to see, in those scenarios, more brand integration. I know there's some spots that are
Yes.
definitely running heavy around here that I wish I saw more brand integration outside the visual realm. Even from a logo standpoint, there's a few grocers and retailers that I think would really benefit from that. That could take that great equity that they just built through these moments of especially high ad spend or high production value, and move that forward. So there's definitely hope in that space. But yeah,
Yes.
I'm a softie.
You're a softie. That's sweet.
I love it. Yeah. I cry in commercials all the time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, audio wise though, it's interesting that, well, it depends on the spot, but I have seen a lot of really emotional advertising that they have a very emotional story to tell, but it doesn't tie into their brand because there's no audio element from their brand, or it's really on the outskirts, and then all you get is like an end card, And so you kind of have to
card.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of a classic problem with advertising in general. Is a lot of the time you get this sort of entertainment value we're talking about, but it doesn't necessarily attach itself to the brand. And in the end, you remember that sort of sketch almost, but you don't create that association a lot of the time. And yeah, sound is a great tool for building that association and strengthening that brand and strengthening that emotional connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I'll often watch those ads and then not remember who it was that was doing the ad by the time the ad's done. Yep. So that's a problem.
Super Bowl ads.
Yeah. Sorry? Like?
I said like most Super Bowl ads.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are, they're entertaining for the most part.
Yeah. But you retain the entertainment and not whatever they were trying to convey a lot of the time.
Yeah, exactly. Jeanna, how about you? Anything that occurs to you?
Well, I keep thinking about current trends, and I honestly haven't seen anything too impressive yet this year.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to be a contradiction to myself and bring up a really old one that I don't know if it was served in Canada, but I'm sure Colleen and Adam remember this. And it's so long lasting to me, and they play it every year, and it's just as good now as it was like whatever 30 years ago that it started. But the M&M Christmas commercial with the yellow and the red M&M, and they find Santa. And I'll have to send the link to you if you haven't seen it. But it's
please do.
The two M&Ms, and they come down the stairs, and they find Santa, and then they have this confrontation, and all of a sudden, one of the M&Ms goes, "He does exist," and then Santa goes, "They do exist," and then the M&M and Santa, they both pass out, and then you hear the other M&Ms like, "Santa?" And I love this commercial. They play, I think it's like something from the Nutcracker, maybe the Sugar Plum Fairies or something like that. And it's obviously Christmas, and it's not their sonic branding or anything, but I love that they just totally took this and they have been playing it every year. And the year I don't see it played, I'm going to be so sad because it was so like memorable. And the way that they placed the music over the M&M speaking, it felt like it worked with like the tone of each of these different M&M's voices. When they both pass out, it's like perfect timing. It's a really good job with a music supervisor for sure. But it it represents the tone of what you think of for these M&Ms, other than like, they're really ridiculous sides of it, but it has heart to it. And I really appreciate that. And although it's a very old ad, I love seeing it every year.
Yeah,
That's
along
one
those
of the
same
things
lines.
that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Colleen.
Okay, I'll take it. That's one of the things that the System 1 research is definitely finding, that a good ad with a good emotional connection can be run 1,000 times and you don't get tired of it.
Exactly.
There is no wear out. And you could put more of your money to developing a sonic brand or higher reach and frequency and not keep inventing the wheel. Just keep playing that commercial that Jeanna loves.
Yeah. I mean, I think that part of the problem can be that people change their audio brand too quickly. And these emotional ads, again, they work for a reason. So if you don't need to change it, why do it? It's a question for the ages, I guess, because you always wonder why things change before people really remember them. And clearly this M&M's commercial has really got it figured out. Adam, did you have something to add there?
Yeah, well, that's along those same lines, Jenna. So the another historic ad, and I have yet to see it this year. There was a Hershey's ad where it just plays "We wish you a Merry Christmas" as if the Hershey Kisses are bells. And
I remember that one. Mm-hmm.
it just plays it. That's all it does, is it plays the song as if it's a little Easter egg for everyone to say, "Hey, here's We Wish You a Merry Christmas." And I, like I said, I've yet to see it this year. That said, like most of anything I watch would be streaming pretty late. So who knows? But that one too has always like you hear it all the time. And back to Colleen, to your point, I wonder if that's still a good strategy when it comes to the fatigue. It's the same song that we've heard many times.
It turns out,
It'll
according
be
to the
interesting to
research
see.
that I've been hearing about,
Yeah.
is there's not fatigue. If you love it, you can
Yeah.
listen to the story over and over.
That one in particular, Adam, I think that feels more of a give back, because it's not, I mean, it's selling.
Yeah.
Obviously it's selling. But like you said, all it is it's playing the bells and then it's done and it's like almost a bow and then, you're welcome and move on. And so it's not offensive. It's very like positive subliminal messaging, right? It puts a smile on your face because it's kind of silly. But it's not offensive at all. And I think that's why you can watch it over and over again.
I kind of love the idea of how it's almost when you license music, you're borrowing that equity, but it's to the point where Hershey's could get a brand impression by running that spot. I'm in the other room and I'm going to think Hershey's a little bit whenever I hear that played on bells, and they'll get me from the other room. And it's possible that it could be a different spot as well. Granted, chances are it's not, but I love the idea of things being able to cross, or spots being able to cross boundaries like that. Sorry, Jonathan. John, sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just going to comment on how I think this whole, and I guess it was designed to do this, but this whole conversation really illustrates the power of sound and music in general. Earlier we talked about, Jeanna, I think you described it as torturous, all the retail music and everything.
Yes.
Now we find ourselves in this kind of wholesome, nostalgic kind of vibe as well. Yeah.
I have a question.
The other.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, John.
No, go ahead.
I have a question for you then. Along the same lines of what we're talking about here, what if a brand rewrites the words to a popular song that is a Christmas-related song and has their own version of it? Because as a voice actor, I've been asked to sing alternate versions of these many, many times in my career. Do you think they work? Or is it just, putting lipstick on a pig?
I'm always a fan of having your own assets and adapting those. So, I mean, if you had your own song, then you could adapt it to Christmas as opposed to what you're describing. Yeah, something you can take a little more ownership over.
I think it's done, but I think that, I mean, it can be done well, but I think it tends to work better when it's comedic rather than serious.
Yeah.
Because, like, because
Yes.
Oh,
then
yeah.
you're acknowledging it's not actually your song, that you're just kind of, slapping something else on it. But
Yeah.
if you can find the relevance to what your message is from the existing song and the delivery is good, usually that works.
Yeah, most of it is parody. I'm not talking about people being serious with that, usually. But yeah,
Well, and to that,
Mhm.
Jody.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and to it, I think is as long as your brand can own that comedy, right? It's the brands who step
Mhm.
out, who try to do something that's not within their character, is when it starts to fall flat. Even though the execution could be outstanding, it just if it's off equity, it's off equity.
I
Yeah.
have a good example of that one. Again, it's super old, but Western Union, everybody needs some money sometimes. Do you remember that commercial? It's
Mhm.
Frank Sinatra,
Yeah.
I think, but it's like everybody needs some money sometimes, and it's like showing all of the things that are going wrong, and they have to call
Mhm.
for money. So they're like traveling, and their suitcase breaks or whatever. But it like totally worked. But again, a parody because it's silly. But it took me forever to look it up because I was trying to figure it out like a couple weeks ago. But it was well done. I thought it was really well done.
Yeah, there are times when it can work, definitely. I'm wondering specifically around the holidays when we're trying to not be inundated with all the same songs, how well it works
Right.
when you do a parody because you've heard that song so many times. I guess when it's different, I don't know. Were you going to say something, Colleen?
I was just thinking that humans generally like things that are new but not that new, and that
Yeah.
probably having the familiar tune, and then if you hear something clever, I think the biggest danger is cheesiness. But if you have something clever, and as Adam says, anchored in the brand, if it's a tongue-in-cheek brand, then it's a tongue-in-cheek lyric, that'll work. Um, and maybe it adds freshness rather than clutter. It's just a theory.
Hmm. Yeah, good point. Are you looking for ways to improve your company's or podcast's impact? You'd be surprised how powerful the use of an intentional audio branding strategy can be. Want to know more? I have a free downloadable PDF that gives you my 5 tips for implementing an intentional audio strategy at voiceoversandvocals.com/audio-branding-strategy. That location does ask to put you on a mailing list, just to send you updates on when the new podcasts come out. But if you really don't want to give your email out, I understand. Just contact me directly. My email is all over my website, and I'll make sure you get that PDF without needing to sign up anywhere. If you do sign up, though, you also get access to a resources section called The Studio, where I have videos, white papers, and PDFs, discounts from my guests, and snippets of audio from my guests that no one else gets to hear. So maybe it's worth your while. Totally up to you. And of course, if you're looking for voiceovers, you can get in touch with me about that too. Now, back to the podcast.
Well, that goes back to what you were talking. I can't remember who exactly. Maybe it was Colleen talking about like the whole coming up with the brand persona and then just having. Yeah, I'm just echoing what you just said, Colleen.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, yeah. It's interesting to see what's happening and what's been happening over the last years. But I love, Jeanna, that you mentioned that there's a ad out there that's 30 plus years old that you still love. I think that's fantastic. And I hope that they do keep using it because obviously it works.
I am going to send it to you right after this, and you're going to just be like, oh my gosh, this is the cutest thing ever.
I think I've seen it. I am almost positive that I've seen it. Go ahead, Adam.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I was just laughing because I can hear the sound of Santa in my head. Oh, I can like, play that
Yep.
ad in my head. It's been there for years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Okay, I
definitely.
have something that is not a trend as far as I know, but should be a trend.
Okay.
As every company is out there trying to become more diverse and more inclusive, really Christmas music comes from all over the world in many languages, and holiday music in general. And you could make a much bigger palette to choose from if you chose songs that are from the Caribbean and songs from Spain and songs from France. And and maybe popular with different nationalities, ethnic groups, ages. And it wouldn't all have to be the same sort of 50 songs over and over again. You could increase the perception of your inclusivity by making your Christmas music and your holiday music more inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
Just a thought.
Oh, I love it. Adam, what do you think?
Oh, I love it as well. I wholly subscribe to that. And it's one of those, I think it'll take time situations. Although I gotta say, like in our house, my kids have gravitated towards all the new Sia Christmas records versus the others that we have in our library. And I think it's beautifully refreshing to hear songs that still have now granted, like the CS stuff is poppy, right, and it pushes things, and then sometimes you're like, is this actually a holiday record? But yeah, I agree 100%. I love to hear things get pushed forward, even and especially like on the inclusivity side. That's a beautiful idea, Colleen. So how do we do this? That's the question.
Well, I was thinking in terms of retailers, banks, and people that have people streaming in. It would be to help create guidelines around the music for. Yeah, that I once did a long in-depth interview with somebody who worked in a Canadian department store, and it sounded as if the music not only drove her crazy, but she also was very aware that the music that was chosen didn't really go with the people who came into the store.
Mm-hmm.
Especially the people who went to the expensive parts of the store. So that's another potential thing that needs to be thought about. Should we have the same music downstairs where the makeup is and people are playing around, and when people are contemplating expensive purchase that maybe would enhance your, I don't know, social status or something? And instead of thinking of it just in terms of day parting, think of it as zoning.
Mm-hmm.
And who your audience is in each part of the store, or what your merchandise is.
That makes a huge amount of sense. In fact, I know that Steve Keller, when we had our conversation, I know that he's mentioned how music in different parts of a store will influence what you buy. So you probably all know about the music being played in where they're selling wine, and they were selling, they were playing French music, and then they sold more French wine, and then they played German music, and they sold more German wine. And Larry just mentioned that to me in our discussion, Colleen. So, I mean, it's a pretty popular study. So you would think that a lot more people would use that to their advantage, or at least think about it. I love your idea of zoning.
This has been part 1 of our interview. I hope you'll tune in next week for part 2. Well, that's the end of this episode. Thanks for listening. And if you like what you heard, why not tell a friend about this podcast? It's available in all the usual locations. Until next time.